Like I said, it's really cool to get some tankers on here. I know you guys were task org to Alpha Company, but still, it's great to have a different perspective. And what I tell everybody, especially in the conversations of why should I participate, it's like, hey, this is your chance to get your story, to give context of what everyone else was doing. Because you get a lot of people are like, well, it's just gonna be a Bravo company story. It's like, no, this is your chance. Get your story out there. So give the movie people stuff to run with.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
But yeah, so uh now were all three of you basic training? I know you guys do onset, but were you guys all together or where does the group kind of pick up?
May of 2005, May or June 2005, when 112 transitioned to Combined Arms Battalion. I believe that was May.
Yeah, give or take, but we can just say well, I mean, we lost Brad, so hopefully he'll jump back on, um but yeah, we'll roll with that and we'll just kind of pick the story up there because when we do the remote debrief individually, we'll do like that whole hey, what was your experiences before, but with a group that could get kind of long and just kind of out of take us a whole bunch of different
Hey,
directions.
Colby.
So we'll give Brad a second to hop back on, and then yeah, we'll just pick it up from do a little intro, and then we'll pick it up
Colby.
reflagging
Need to hop off
from
the internet,
two
please.
seven, and everybody became
It's not
112,
all
and
my bandwidth.
the train up.
Yeah, for sure. Goody, you looking old, brother.
Yeah. I was gonna shave. Look younger, huh?
It's good to see you, man. I haven't seen you since we were down in Killeen for the reunion.
Yeah. That was like 10 years ago, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we're
Almost.
actually gearing up for the 20-year reunion.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Bobby about that a couple months ago. He mentioned maybe Florida.
So they've kind of set their sights on the National Infantry Museum. Um, I'm kind of trying to get them to go a different direction, but I think it's pretty much going to be the NIM, which is Fort Benning, or well,
Yep.
back to Benning, but yeah, Fort Benning, Georgia. So, but now that the tankers are all at Benning too, I mean, I guess can at least say, hey, it's the
Yeah.
Maneuver Center of Excellence. I mean, even though that's not what the museum's called.
Right. Goody, I was just looking at that picture of you holding the chunks of asphalt
Every bit of it right
after we got blown up, and
Yeah.
that was my first day as a tank commander, right?
Yeah.
In a borrowed tank because ours was destroyed, and so we borrowed um, Garcia's brand new tank. And the last thing he said before we rolled out was, "Hey, don't mess my tank up." I said, "Oh, good, good."
Take care of it.
We messed it up.
So, if you don't mind, let's do just a kind of a quick introduction of the who's who and what your rank and job was at that time, and then we'll just kind of go from you know reflag, and we'll do the train up, so you guys can kind of talk to us, tell us how the train up went, and then we'll get into Bakuba.
Sounds good.
However, you guys want to start. If you want to go, Brad, however, you guys, rock paper scissor it.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brad.
so essentially when we left, I was a corporal at the time during train up, and then got promoted. Matt, you and I both got promoted at the same time, didn't we? Um,
I was a month after you.
was it? Okay, well, either way. Yeah,
Or no, we did get promoted. I'm sorry, you were a corporal,
yep, yep.
and
But we
yeah,
both got our
we got promoted
five
at the same time.
in our in country. Yeah, I was a gunner on the 4 tank at the time when we hopped over there, and on the platoon sergeant tank. Matt, why don't you take the next one?
Yeah, I went over as a specialist and was driving a lot, and uh, I was able to get some gunner time, at gunnery and the simulators and stuff, just to get familiar with it. Um, I think our platoon sergeant was adamant on working, uh, at least one rank ahead or above, and so, did that's kind of how I got my feet wet. And uh, like Brad said, we got promoted at the same time, so we did a lot of rotating around from even driving to gunning. We didn't really have a lot of loaders, uh, just because I think we got short on men. So yeah, I got promoted as a sergeant about what 4 months over there.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. I don't remember when, but yeah. Goody.
Gutierrez, Carlos. Yeah, I was a specialist over there. I came as a PFC in the company, but when I was in Iraq, I was a specialist, and I got out as a specialist too.
Okay. All right. So you guys, as we were talking about a little before, the unit transition from 27 CAV to 112. We did a wonderful train up, a lot of, as Matt was talking about, the simulators, gunnery, and then JRTC. During that time period, did anything stick out? Anything you guys want to reminisce about or share from reflag to train up?
We did a lot of sandbox, a
Mhm.
lot of out in the field training, a lot of hip pocket training. I mean, anytime our platoon sergeant found an opportunity for some training, that was it. We didn't just sit around the uh, CP or get zonked. We would see some other companies get zonked out, and I think our platoon sergeant had other ideas. He was very passionate about making sure we were prepared for what was ahead. And at the time, I think we were pretty
Oh
irritated with
goodness,
it.
yeah, because it
We
was
had
hot.
things we wanted to do. Uh, I mean, I would say he would go even as far as doing a barracks inspection on days that nothing else was going on, just to make sure everybody was squared away. And in hindsight, I think all of us are uh, thankful for that kind of leadership, even though at the time we didn't quite understand it. And I kind of explained that to Sergeant Major Felt a few months ago. Like, when we were in Bakuba, you were very straight edge and hard on everyone, especially about wearing the proper PPE on fob warhorse. Reflective vest and or belt and gloves with your rifle. And he was like, "Well, now you know." It wasn't just to get under everybody's skin, but operational readiness, and I think that's what our platoon sergeant was all about.
Now, I think there's one part of that story you may be missing, Matt. You did not get enough hools in there. Sorry, Major Hool.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Major
I was
Hula.
just thinking that he was the one that was always hua 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 after everything. Oh my goodness.
His best line: "If that don't put lead in your pencil, you're dead."
uh, all right. Just so for clarification, though, let's go over. So, what platoon and company were you guys all in?
So we were in Charlie Company, and then but when we got to country, we got attached to Alpha Company. We were third platoon, and we remained third platoon inside of Alpha, um, and then yeah, rolled with Alpha the entire time during the deployment. So I don't even think we ever really got to be with Charlie Company at all when we hit the ground. I think in Kuwait we switched over to Alpha. I think if I remember right.
Yeah, that
No, I
sounds
think it
about.
was I think it was a couple weeks in Warhorse when we got switched over, because we spent a lot of time on Warhorse, and then when they decided to push out to the cops, that's when they kind of ripped us from Charlie, put us with Alpha. And Charlie Company went down to Kanbani Sod with Apache's third platoon, I think it was. We pushed
Yeah, because
out
that,
to
that
ERF.
that sounds a little more right, because at first everybody didn't know. Well, the masses didn't know exactly where we were going, and then once we got to Bakuba, path or not path, but advanced party or what, or path, whatever they used to call it. But anyways, when we all got up there and they started battle planning of, okay, how we're going to use the battalion to the best ability. Tank companies needed more infantry guys, and the infantry companies needed a little more firepower. So they divided up the battalion to become a even more combined armed battalion. Um, so I think you guys pretty much are okay with us just skipping ahead to say the deployment then.
Yeah, ROTC wasn't a whole lot of, or JROTC or whatever it was. It wasn't. There was really big mosquitoes that wanted to carry you away. Yeah, it was. Bakuba was really where everything. We all cut our teeth there for sure.
All right, so let's just pick it up in Bakuba. So normally what works best is kind of just sticking to somewhat of a chronological order. Normally by the time we hit like Arrowhead Ripper, we're getting towards the end. So with that, I'll just turn it over to you guys, and please take us on the journey of you men in Bakuba.
Yeah, I know. Like for me, it was if the thing that hits me first, thinking about the timeline. When we first got there, we didn't have our tanks right away. We just had the Humvees straight out the gate, and we were doing those. I remember our first contact. At least what I remember was our first contact was rolling out. We were out handing out flyers, trying to shake hands, kiss babies, all that kind of thing, and uh, we ended up getting that sniper attack on us, and ended up hitting what was it, the Terp?
Com check.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that was towards the end of our tour, or the not the tour, but the patrol that day. Um, from my perspective, I had the 50 on our Humvee, and I was on the gun, and I just remember one of the infantry guys yelling that there was sniper up in the window, and through that, everybody started raining bullets into that area. Um, I had the medic on my truck. I don't know who was driving. Were you driving, Matt, or was Goody? You were? Okay. Okay.
I was driving.
Yeah, I
Goody was driving
okay.
T-Bow's truck.
Yeah, and I just remember we pulled up because we had the medic with us. We had to pull up around to screen so we could get the medic out and evac. Um, evac that was you said Tom check? Tom check.
Comcheck,
That's
Comcowitz
right.
was his
Okay.
name.
Yeah. See, when I wrote all my stuff down, I kept everybody's names out of it. I don't know why at the time when I wrote it, I was like, I don't want to put anybody's names attached to anything. I don't know what's going to happen. And, but yeah, we pulled up next to him, loaded him in, and that whole time I just remember I was shooting the 50 up into the window I never fully identified where it was at, but I just looked where everybody else was at and started rocking that 50 in there. And um,
Yeah, that was definitely our first contact. The first time I had heard a round hit near me, and I didn't
No.
process it
No.
right away. It sounded like a 22 or firecracker going off. And everybody just kind of paused for a second, and then somebody, yelled sniper, and that's when you see Comcheck. He was standing right off the front of our Humvee. We were with PsyOps. PsyOps were going around passing out the leaflets and everything, and he had bent down and picked up one of these leaflets and started looking at it. A round went right through the back of his calf, and it broke his lower leg, compound fracture. It was pretty traumatic for him. And I remember when we did get him loaded into my Humvee, and I think I can't remember who our medic was at that time, but we were. His leg is right here by me, so I'm trying to stabilize it and drive us out of there. We decided to just pull out, and we're not even thinking about IEDs at this point. We just want to get him back to the aid station because he was bleeding quite a bit. They put a tourniquet on, I think, and gave him some morphine.
We kind of shoved him up in the truck to the point where I had to straddle up on top and put my feet up on top of the gun, well, up on the turret area, just so he could fit underneath us and going out there.
It was chaotic, and like Brad said, it was really early on, maybe
a couple weeks in. It wasn't very far into it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, so there you are. Let's just say 2 weeks, 3 weeks into, theater. So you're doing a PsyOps mission, so you did complete the left seat, right seat ride, but here you are 3 weeks into this deployment, and you got your first casualty, and it was feet away from you guys.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I remember shortly before that, Rivera, we were out there doing one of those same kind of missions, and I don't know why, you don't quite think about what you're supposed to do there until all of a sudden you're in the thick of all of it. And I remember we were sitting there, I was up on the gun, and I don't know, I guess I wasn't paying attention properly, but I remember he yelled at me to pay attention and make sure I'm watching, and because stuff was going to happen, and nothing had happened yet at that point. But I still remember he yelled at me about it. That we're really here. This is the real thing. It's not JRTC or out at the range or anything like that. It's like we're on the two-way range now, and that was kind of a click for me, where all of a sudden it was like, oh shoot. And then that happened, that mission we were talking about happened, and that was the first time I actually shot rounds downrange and in there, and it was like, this is the real deal, to the point where while we were driving out of there, I remember with the 50 cal shooting, and when we finally got onto the main MSR, I remember looking at my ammo box.
It was still locked.
I had 2 rounds left in my ammo box at that point. And I remember going, oh shoot, I hope nothing else happens on the way, because like all my ammo was down below me. I was not prepared for any kind of action other than my one can that I had up on the top. And it was like, we're not doing that again. We got to pay attention better,
And to add to the confusion, Johnson's truck didn't have radio anymore because Tebow shot both of the antennas off.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Too bad we don't have him on. Get his replay of this.
Too bad he's not on.
He didn't break trigger, I don't think. He just swept that entire field.
I think we had 5 trucks with us on that one, and every single gunner was spraying. I mean, it was everything we could do. And there was no, sector of fire or anything. It was like, we're all shooting at this thing, and it was chaos. Yeah.
And just to segue on Comcheck getting hit, Brad mentioned that our interpreter also got hit, but it was the same bullet that went through Comcheck that hit the interpreter in the foot, because the interpreter was standing just a couple feet away from him, and so that sucker went through his leg and into the interpreter's foot. Just wild.
So how about both Good and Matt? What were your feelings of, hey, we're 3 weeks in and we've already had a couple incidents, casualties. What were your feelings moving forward?
Go ahead, Goody.
was fun. It was a lot of adrenaline. I actually wasn't much afraid. It was more like let's do it.
A lot of adrenaline, and I think once we got back um, to the aid station, I remember one of my first thoughts. I don't think I expressed it or said anything, but I was like, man, those fourth ID guys are a bunch of liars. They told us everything was chill, like nothing bad was happening around here. And then that happened. And I mean, that was the day that just set everything off. It just, it snowballed from that day. It was wild.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, it was a reality check.
to fast forward just a little bit, because that was kind of our initial, if I remember right, leading up to this conversation here. I've kind of been looking through my journals and thinking back on all that time, and where I remember like the real, oh my goodness, this is what we're facing moment was when the Saddam March happened. You remember when they had
Yes.
it was the day Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death,
Found guilty.
and the citizens of Bakuba or whoever was there was very much in favor of Saddam, and they were marching out there, and we were all on the main MSR, and it was a tank and a Bradley and a tank and a Bradley, and stretched all the way down this thing. And I remember sitting in that, and we were facing the alleyways.
Muford.
Yeah, and we were looking down the alleys, and we were just supposed to identify as um, potential insurgents came out, right? And watch for weapons and all this stuff. And I remember watching, and you start seeing all these crowds, just people, hundreds of people walking, and then you see a random rifle in the crowd, and then okay, there's a machine gun and there's an RPG, and we're like, well, what do we do? We can't just, you're not going to shoot them because they're in and amongst all the civilians and everything else. And it's like, oh, we gotta sit there and just report it up, keep reporting it up. And I remember they were just walking in between the alley, and then they turned and started coming out the alleyway towards us. And as we're going, I had um, I think it was Morgan with me as the driver on that one. And um, as soon as they start coming out, we go to turn, and the turret dies. Like all the power in the turret just dies out. And they were one alleyway down across from us, and I think I might have been on Garcia's tank at that point. Because I remember him yelling to traverse, 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 because they were trying to come. All the people were walking out towards us like they were going to come and mob over the vehicle, is what we were feeling like. And as they're coming, my turret dies, and so I'm sitting down there manually traversing this thing, 1 degree at a time, slowly turning. And then we finally had the bright idea: pivot the tank. You know, we can pivot the tank. And so we're yelling at Blue down there to pivot the tank. And so he swings the tank over, and the whole gun goes over, and as soon as you flag them, they all freak out and run away, and they all went back in. But unfortunately, they didn't end up coming out to us. But I remember that was like the first visual that I had, that I remember feeling like there are a lot of them here, and this is going to be a fight, and that was kind of my, remember when I was feeling like that was our big visual on that one. But about you guys, you have any, remember?
Yeah, the IPs came running out and started shooting into the crowd. And I remember, I think it was Gonzalez that was calling up to Apache 6, reporting it. And, he actually stuck his head out of the turret and was telling those guys to stop shooting, yelling at the IPs to stop shooting at them. And I don't know if they were targeting or if they were just shooting over them to scare them back. But it was definitely chaos.
Yeah. Well, then it was shortly after that that we started getting, I think they put the curfew into place shortly after that moment when we started rolling out and getting to the point where it was more, I guess where things really got hot, right? When we started engaging at night, because we were going out and we were finding, we essentially got to the point where we were at, there was going down the alleyways to enforce the curfew. And as we're rolling up to the alleyways, I just remember we lined up a tank on each alley, and we're watching down these alleyways, and they had insurgents all down there, and you'd identify RPGs and AKs and everything else. And we got to the point where it was like fish in a barrel, essentially. And that kind of woke everything up, I think, for our sector right there.
Yeah, they didn't anticipate our thermals, I guess, because it was like they didn't even know we were there because our exhaust shooting out the back, that tank, out front, you're not hearing it unless it's rolling toward you or something, which still it's got to be up on you until you hear it. And if you're just sitting there idling,
if your driver's really good, he locks that, gets it rolling just right, so the tank's not doing this anymore. It kind of smooths out, and oddly enough, you can sneak up on somebody with a tank if you really are good at it. But
and like something Matt was saying, how the previous unit was saying everything was chill. They maybe weren't in sector, so yeah, people weren't used to someone actually being in sector. But everything you guys are describing, using the tanks, using every benefit that you had to meet the combatants at their location.
and let's just back up before we started rolling in our tanks to towards the end of the Humvee patrols because we did a outer cordon joint patrol with IA and I think it might have been the entire battalion where we were just the outer cordon. So we were kind of just walking around looking into shops and stuff, talking to people. It was like not a whole lot going on. And then you hear all hell break loose inside where they're clearing houses with IA and the infantry guys. And then we have this car barreling towards our Humvee, just flying in. And we all draw down on it, and it slams on the brakes, and the guy's getting out holding his head. Do y'all remember that? You remember why he was holding his head and where he was going?
This one, no.
So I was driving for Johnson that day. Okay, this guy slams on his brakes, jumps out, and he's holding his head, and he tells the interpreter that he's driving himself to the hospital because he got shot in the head. And the hospital's just over the bridge. And as we're rolling back to a Warhorse, this is before we got to the cop. We're driving back to Warhorse, and we're almost to that road where the mosque is, the evil mosque is what we always called it. And I hear a real loud bang on my door, and the door just got shot. And all of our adrenaline, we had that adrenaline crash where everybody's just tired and they want to go back. Well, that woke me up, and I remember screaming like, "Oh my God, I'm hit!" Johnson's grabbing a hold of me and like checking me, and I'm like, that's not what I meant. I meant that the door guy hit. So he's checking me, and oh man, I felt like such a sissy after that. And because I was kind of just zoned out watching the road, for anything, and then that just snuck up on me and hit the door, and we got back, and there's a nice little divot in the door where the round hit. Yeah, that was before we started taking the tanks out, and I think Johnson from Apache, their infantry platoon that was attached to us, I think that they hit an IED right behind us in their Humvee shortly after that, and that's when we were just like, all right, we're going to roll tanks from now on. And one of our very first patrols was escorting EOD or the engineers to look for and clear
Russian
IEDs at night. Yeah, yeah, and we were the lead tank, and ended up hitting 2 IEDs within about 500 feet of each other. The first one, we hit it. It wasn't anything significant, and I was driving, so I start rolling forward again, and just as I see the crush wire going across the road, I didn't want to slam on the brakes and throw Murphy and the platoon sergeant into their sights, and so I'm like easing on the brake, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hit it. I'm like, sorry guys, and we hit it, and the turret was over the side. Murphy was scanning down the alleyways, and my IBA was on the bustle rack at the back of the turret. It got blown off, and I never saw that again.
Might have been on an insurgent.
So that was
sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one that's happened to.
But I do remember that became the a catchphrase after that of the platoon sergeant. Sorry guys.
Sorry guys.
Yep. We
all had catchphrases. That's funny now that we think about that, because I had sorry guys. Yours was what the poop. And Goody was, what's Hambalaha? He was asking what jambalaya was.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So catchphrases have been established. Now we got, I'm sorry, guys. You're in tanks. Obviously, that second IED wasn't too bad. I mean, you're all here talking about it, giggling. So now, where did you guys go from there?
Well, we continued doing night patrols with the tanks, and eventually we got tasked out to go to ERF and provide route security.
Tell everybody what ERF is.
The Emergency Reaction Force, is that what it was called? Emergency Reaction Force? It was the Iraqi police station. Yeah.
Okay. So this was a joint QRF, but we gave it a new name, and you were working with the Iraqi police, the Iraqi army.
Well, that was our combat outpost with Apache Company.
Okay, all right. So for clarification, ERF is the Apache outpost, the Apache cop. Okay.
Was it ERF or ERB?
Yep. Your ERB was your enlisted record brief.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we got sent out there. A lot of sandbag filling and fortifying that place, because it was a sniper magnet
building,
and
one of the tallest ones. I think.
And the first day we get there, we had gotten there about 15 minutes after. I think it was somebody's lieutenant had got hit in the sappy plate by a sniper, and he was fine, but it grazed off of his SAPI plate, and we go up to the roof, start taking pot shots, and I had that M14, that old school Woodstock M14 with the day-night sight on it. And I can't remember if it was you, Brad, or Tebow right next to me calling targets. And I see a guy in plain clothes with a AK standing next to a sign to the east of the compound. And I put my sights on him, and I'm about to fire. And as I pull the trigger, one of the IPs up there with us kind of knocks into me, and I miss. And he goes, "That's IP." He had no uniform on, no badge or anything. And his buddy definitely helped him out there, because
I think that must have been Tebow with you on that one. Yeah.
yeah, golly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that place took a lot of fire.
Every day after morning prayer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually just shared a
'cause
story this morning on my page about that ERF, that I was up there with Gray, pulling security one morning, and we started taking sniper fire on there. I was on the 240, and we were up there shooting out, watching everything. It was just me and Gray up there. It was all that was on the roof that morning. There was a schoolhouse I think it was off to the west, that they would often shoot at us from. And there was, we start taking these fire, and I remember we had all the barricade of everything around, and I'm sitting there on the 240, and just whack, and dust kicks up in front of me, and I'm like, oh, shoot, you duck down and all that, and I hear a couple more shots, and platoon sergeant calling up on the radio, "What are you doing up there? You better get some rounds going, shooting back down at them." And I'm like, okay, well, I get back up on this thing, start shooting, and I look over at Gray, and he's sitting there like, "I'm not getting up there." I'm like, all right, so I get up on the 240, and I get ready to start shooting back, and the sandbag in front of me just goes poof right in front of my face, and just dust, and I'm like, oh crap, so I duck back down again, and then I get back up trying to see where this is at, and just as I did that last one, this guy was walking rounds up, trying to walk into my position, and right as I got up there, one more round slung past, and he went right past my head, and I could not hear out of this ear for a while. I mean, I don't, and as I said in my video this morning that I released, was, that guy was walking him in the whole time, and we all have a reason of why we're here, and that was one of those moments. And I am a firm believer that God has protected me over and over and over again over there, and there was immense power of prayer that was surrounded my platoon when we were there. Ooh, my camera's zooming in. And as we're there, that was one of those moments where it was like this guy was locked onto me, and God said, "Not yet. This isn't the time. You're still here. There's still more that I have for you to do here." And at that moment, the bullet missed me. I started returning fire with the 240, and that was it. There was no more bullets going down. He wasn't continuing to shoot at me. Ran out of rounds. I don't know, whatever it was, but that was one of the moments that I'll remember the best of being up on that ERF. Was just, I've never had a round anywhere close to that, as close as that one was to my head. But it was, I mean, I just remember it just snapped past my head, and it was just ringing. Just like, I don't know how close it was, but it was close enough. So.
Yeah, they were always testing us up there, and first time I had heard incoming mortar was up on that roof at nighttime, and I know Tebow was up there with me. You're on mute, Brad.
Sorry, I was trying to tell my camera to not zoom in on me.
Oh,
All good.
so yeah, we're up on top of that roof at night, and it was real quiet and nice outside, and we just started hearing. We were talking about something. We started hearing this strange sound, followed with a boom off in the distance, and we're like, "What is that?" And I think we called it down on the radio. Maybe something. I can't remember exactly what we said, but somebody came up the stairs and yelled at us like, "Hey, dummy, that's mortar fire, and it's getting close." Like it was landing in that canal or that depression right, 20 meters in front of the building, and it was just there was a lot of firsts for us there that I wish could have been included in training. Of course, you do that reaction fire in basic training where you low crawl and they're shooting the M60s over your head so you can hear what it sounds like when rounds are flying past. But man, the mortars didn't sound like they did in the movies. You know what I mean? Like it
Movies are
wasn't
those,
that pew, it wasn't that sound.
yeah, those artillery simulators that they like to throw at you.
Yeah. And so that was a new one for us. And I mean, even Tebow, someone who had been deployed, before shortly. I think he was with you, wasn't he, Brad? You guys were in
Yep.
Baghdad a year before, and so it was a learning curve for us for sure, because that wasn't going to be the first time that outpost would receive indirect fire, and so we got into quite a bit of back and forth from that rooftop. But thankfully, I don't think we had any real serious. Well, I take that back. The other section did, with the guy that got hit in the head by the sniper up there.
It didn't take him out though, right? If I remember right. Yeah, isn't that the one that wrapped around, followed the Kevlar?
But it it opened it up, and E was holding it in. I can't remember that first sergeant's name. Daniels. First Sergeant Daniels. Man, he was such a trip to be up on that rooftop with during a firefight. Talk about. He always reminded me of Gunny Highway. Very crusty, and he had a certain what's the word, vernacular to him. He was loud, and I
He's the
think
one that
he
called us the
had.
Panzer platoon, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, the Panzer platoon. But I don't know if he was missing an eye or if he had a lazy eye, but man, he was just scary looking. He was
Yes.
like, the guy has seen some things, like he definitely was a weathered leader, but man, he sure knew how to get people riled up and throw it right back at the enemy. Good Lord. You would see his infantry guys run up on the roof, and we'd get up there, and it wasn't save your ammo. It was like, hey, we got an AT4 right there. Let's throw that at them. We're like, no kidding. I want to see this, because I'd never seen this in real life either. And so, what do? We fire it, and the back blast takes out the entire glass facade that was right behind us on the roof. Golly, yeah. First Sergeant Daniels, that guy was awesome.
We were pretty much, we didn't hold back anything out there. Believe we were the first in the brigade, at least, to fire main gun rounds downrange there. I remember for a little bit, for like a tiny amount of time, we had to have clearance from higher to fire the main gun, and that went away real quick. Um, you know,
Yep.
I remember the first time we shot the main gun, IPs had taken sniper fire. There was a building, really tall building over by, like, I think it was around checkpoint 456. Um, and IPs had taken fire and they called us up to take it out. Yeah, and I remember that was the first, I think we shot a heat round into that one. And then they wanted us to take out the whole side of the building. And so we hit it with another heat. And then one of the Bradley lieutenants came rolling up with us, and he said, "I want to get in on this," and started shooting his 25 Mike, or 20 Mike, whatever the Bradley has, and started whacking it. And I mean, that was the first time I remember shooting the main gun. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is real deal. We're shooting for keeps here on this one." And
Oh, especially if you remember, and I don't know if the line companies were saying this, but I remember the battalion staff saying this, like, "Whoa, whoa, we don't use main round here. Everything's chill." Like you guys said, everything's chill. Oh, we haven't shot a main round in months, years. And it's like, okay, all right. And then, like you were saying, you're the first ones to start using main round, as soon
yeah,
as you get your
platoon sergeant
tanks.
was
Yeah,
not
and I
holding
think
back. He's like, "Shoot that thing." I'm like, "Okay, here we go." First round, downrange, off it goes, and that was, yeah, it was for real. I mean, I think if I remember right, I ended up shooting some like 54 main gun rounds in country that year. Um, and I could be off on that a little bit, but I think if I remember right, it was up there enough. I was like, okay, we fired some gun, you know, but
I know there was one time when we shot 17 in
that
one
picture that.
engagement. That was when we were at Gabe, Fob Gabe, and we had to go. We got reports of a Al Qaeda outpost or hideout, and we had UAV flying over, spotted quite a few guys going in and out of this house, and they put us on that, and that's when we gave Wetzel
Yep,
some
yep,
gunner time,
yep,
and he was
yeah,
medic, wasn't he?
yeah.
Was he a
No, no, he
medic
was
or
Fister.
infantry?
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, and we put him in the gunner seat for a little bit and let him. We were told to put everything we had into this house. Air wasn't an option that night, and so we came in and we blasted 17 rounds from our tank, and I think the three tank
yeah, because you,
did
me,
the
and
same
Wetzel in
thing.
that one, and then the three tank, and we were just, yeah, just hitting it. Yeah,
And so didn't get a BDA on that, but I highly doubt there was anything left in that house. Um, Man, before your engagement, that first main gun engagement, Brad, was I think one of the craziest days for me there that I can reflect on, because we were on QRF still, and we got a call about a V-bed hitting that IP checkpoint 456, and we rolled out, and when we got there, you could see that footbridge had collapsed, and I was driving, and our tank commander told me to cross the berm, and as I'm doing so, I see this guy that it looks like he's buried from the waist down into the ground, and he's looking at us, and my eyes are like fixed on him as I'm kind of approaching him, and Gonzalez is like, "Don't run him over," and I'm like, "He's dead. This guy, he was an IP that got blown in half, and his torso landed in the median, like like a freaking bottle
Yeah.
flip. You know, it was insane. I could not process it. Like as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking somebody is in a foxhole or something, like a fighting position. It was so. It still doesn't feel real. It was just wild to see that, and you know, I before we deployed, I watched so many live leak videos and you know, Ogrish and all those websites that show you know all this crazy stuff to try to mentally prepare and fortify my psyche, you know, as much as I could, and nothing can prepare you for seeing something like that. Like that was all you can think about is I do not want to get blown up and land like that. I don't want to be that guy. It sucked.
So after that incident, did you talk to anybody or what was the processing amongst yourselves? Did you guys talk about these things you saw or these incidents that you were all a part of?
I think we had a special way of laughing it off
Yeah.
with each other quite often.
So a little gallows humor and just kind of laugh it off and
I
keep it moving.
remember like to go back to, you know, when we were um, the fish in the barrel scenario. You know, that was my first time actually knowingly taking somebody out. Right? You know, like I saw you, I put reticles on you, you're not there anymore. You know, kind of concept. And you know, for me, that was. Um, I wrote about it in my journal. I was reading through it a little bit, but it was you almost had to put your brain into a different position, and while doing that, oh, there it goes. Um, you know, to do that, I was using the thermals, and I remember writing in my journal that it was taking that and putting it into almost like a video game kind of stance. You know, we were all about playing, you know, different Call of Duty and all that stuff over there, and that was kind of where I had to put my head, you know, to keep myself from going somewhere that I shouldn't, you know, because I mean, we were taking people out daily, you know. I mean, you know, sometimes many a night, you know, kind of thing. It just was the mission that we were having, and you know, and we had the best sights around, and we could see you, and we could reach out and touch you, and I mean, I remember being able to, you know, shooting that 240 700 meters out, you know, and you know, hitting something, you know, it's like you were deadly accurate with the 240 on that gun. You know, you could zero it in and
Single
like that.
shot
I mean, funny side, you know, do you remember the pigeons that they would fly? You know, they'd be out there clapping
on the
them and
school.
trying to fly them around to get you. And I remember one day we were like, well, you know, there are all the pigeons all lined up on the top of the roof. Let's zero the 240. And I remember single shot, you know, shooting these pigeons, and they would just go, poof, and then you go to the next one, and poof, and pigeons were stupid enough they'd look at me like, "Where's Fred?" Oh, poof, you know, and you know, but those 240s, we were we were dead on with them, you know, and yeah, but yeah, you kind of had to put yourself in a different frame of mind. Um, because the things that we saw and the things that we encountered the I mean many IEDs. Oh, I mean, I don't even remember how many. We got very good at finding IEDs. I mean, my goodness, you wouldn't think of it, but I mean, the wires that we were locating, I mean, they were like what, maybe 14 gauge, you know, something. itty bitty things, you know, little copper wire coming across because they couldn't use the um, they couldn't use command det or not command det, but the you know, RF or anything like that because we had all the jammers on the vehicles, and so they had to switch back to just command det or pressure det, and you know, man, I could spot one of those wires running across the road going, I don't know, what did we go, 20 miles an hour usually, roughly. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and you see that thing just barely with the sights, and you know, I mean, I don't even remember how many IEDs. I remember in the two tank, um, they had all of them marked on the turret how many IEDs, and it was like 70, 80, something like that. They ended up finding just their tank alone. Um, you know, and I mean, I felt, you know, that was our main mission through there was we were the screen, we were the shield of everyone moving down Vanessa. You know, I remember the light skinned guys moving through, and we'd come up and screen them as we're going past the different alleyways because people would be shooting at them, and it's like, good luck, you know. I got big heavy steel here, and I'm gonna take anything you got for me, you know. And you know, that was our main mission. We'd find those IEDs, blow them up. We'd, you know, and try and keep everybody safe as best we could out there. But
And you know, just to segue off of that, the enemy is always watching. You know, it's a cliche, I know, but they were getting RTTPs. They would see us recon by fire and IED. You know, Brad would see a commandet wire, and you know, I would find them. We would use that coax instead of waiting 4, 5, 6, 8 hours for EOD. We would blast, you know, coax into that commandet wire and break it, and then look for the actual IED and shoot it and blow it up. You know, and that, I think that was a good method for us because we didn't have to burden, you know, EOD. We could, you know, free them up for other units that needed them. But they watched us and they figured out, you know, our strengths and our weaknesses. And our weakness for sure was the bigger, deep buried or daisy chained IEDs. And man, they really adapted to that and figured it out. You know, they had a love for checkpoint 450, and I think we both lost a tank there at 450, destroyed. And Murphy's, it was bad. I think it was you and Goody that hit that one, right? I was on leave, I believe, when that happened.
Ray driving with me on that one. I don't know.
Okay.
That's what I remember. I don't know. Goody, you weren't in that one with me, were you?
I don't remember having a dead tank. It was probably great.
Yeah, yeah. That one we were we were escorting a wrecker down south, um, and yeah, going through that checkpoint. That was a location that we did not travel to anymore because there were so many IEDs down there that you knew you were going to get hit, and you knew it was going to be bad, and so we couldn't drive down there. We didn't have the manpower to go down there. We couldn't continue that push or continue to overwatch, and so there was about from I don't know how many um, hundreds of yards past that big traffic circle that we just didn't continue to travel down. We'd overwatch it as best we could, but for the most part, there was just you knew that there was crazy amounts of IEDs, but we had to take that wrecker down south and we had to go through it. So we shot down as fast as we could to get down there. It was my tank. I was on the 4 tank on that one, and then we had the 3 tank leading, and the wrecker in between. And you know, we got down to the checkpoint. and it's the Serpentine. Nobody was manning the checkpoint because you didn't go down there anymore. And we're trying to Serpentine. The first tank makes it through, and I remember sitting there going, "Okay, first tank's through. Okay, they didn't hit that one. This is good, because then oftentimes they would hit the first tank, and that would then bottleneck us, and then they'd attack and do something else, and like, okay." So then the wrecker goes, and the wrecker's going through. They didn't hit the wrecker. Okay. Well, this is good because if they're not going to hit the first tank, usually they'll hit the soft skin stuff, something that's going to take out easily. And as they're going through, the wrecker makes it through. Okay, nothing. So, the platoon sergeant tells Gray to get moving, and so we start making it through. And no sooner than we make the first begin of that, the whole tank just boom, just hits us and picks the entire tank up off the ground. I mean, we were completely airborne, and I oddly enough, I think what I yelled was "whoa" or something like that inside the tank, because it was just like, oh my goodness, what's going on, and tanks flying through the air forward, and it kills all the power. All the power in the tank's dead. We glide to a stop. The 3 tank and the wrecker keep going. They're just driving down the road like nothing's happened, and we're by ourselves, middle of this area. Nobody's around us, and we're like, oh shoot, what, So I'm hopping over into the loader's hatch because our radios are dead, and so I'm trying to pull the radios to put an antenna on it to use the battery pack to call the 3 tank to get them to turn around. Our platoon sergeant's up on top trying to figure out what's going on, or trying to assess the situation as best we can. And so they're still driving away down the road. So Sergeant Gonzalez starts shooting the 50 and starts strafing the 3 tank with the 50 cal to get them to realize what's going on. Start shooting rounds out in front of them, and we all rolled hatches down, so the 50's not going to touch the tank. It doesn't matter, but start strafing them, and all of a sudden the wrecker calls up to the 3 tank. Oh, hey, by the way, your tank got hit back there with an IED, which then he's like, the 3 tank stops and flips around really quick and comes up and to get us, and it turns out it was, if I remember right, it was a double stacked anti-tank that they had deep buried in there, and it had hit us. So on the bottom of the tank, you have a front slope that kind of slopes up on the front, and then it's nice and flat, and then there's a little bit, about, I don't know, maybe this big of a section that's got a slope out the backside, and that round exploded right at that spot. And so, the same reason of why we do V-shaped or holes now is so that those, when it's like this, the round shoots out the side instead of penetrating and taking everybody out inside. And that's exactly how it hit. And it hit that spot on the back of the tank, and all the round, the main force blasted behind us, but not to the point where it still didn't completely decimate the engine. The engine was shot. The tank was never recoverable at that point. I mean, we pulled it back in, but we got a new tank after that. And that was another one of those moments that I feel was God using me and the heavy armor that we had, because everything that went before that, if it had hit that wrecker, everybody would have been dead. There's just no doubt there. It was so huge. But where it hit me on the 1 foot section on the 33-foot long tank that could take the hit that would allow us to still be here. But we could take the hit and save everybody else. So it was command det, which again, I'm sitting there and I'm just feeling like it's God just sitting there telling him, the guy's sitting there like, blow the thing up, and wouldn't let it go until it was right at the point where we could take the hit, we were going to live, that IED was out of the chaos now, and nobody was going home in a box that day. And I am thankful that I could take the hit in that point. because I'm still here, I'm able to talk about it. And, that it was big. If it had been a foot forward, I probably wouldn't be here, because it would have flat hit the bottom, the flat section of that tank, and penetrated, and who knows what from there. But I am.
No, we had we'd lost quite a few tanks, just our platoon, our section, even.
All of them.
But between the platoon, I think maybe 5 or 6 tanks in that deployment that were not recoverable. And like I was saying, they were learning the enemy were watching, they were learning, they would see what didn't work. The smaller 155 rounds, they weren't working. Maybe they would get lucky and blow a track, and there were a couple times when we had to get out of the tank in sector and fix our track, and that was always a pucker moment for us, because we always had that saying, death before dismount, and in that case you're not just going to sit out there in the middle of sector in a tank and wait, because we started hearing about all of these weapons that were coming in for AQI, like the RPG-7 with the penetrator. And I remember specifically our platoon sergeant telling us about an RPG penetrating the side of a turret of an M1, and that really resonates with us. And to think going in that these tanks just can't be touched. There's no match for this tank. It's kind of, I think, a general consensus that a lot of us had, and we started to figure it out real quick that they, as primitive as that force was, they could still get the upper hand on us. There's only so much maneuverability and areas you can go in an 80-ton tank, and the EFP started really coming up on the radar quite a bit. And I think the first one that our unit hit was Daniel Morris from Alpha, and that was a tough one, because I was still a specialist at that time, and I remember we were still on Warhorse. It was in November of 06, November 28th or 25th. Anyway, the night before, he had a soldier that was supposed to be getting out of his room so that me and my roommate could move in, and I was getting onto him, telling him, hustle up, let's go. And Morris came around and gave him the old knife hand, like, hey, this is how it's going to be, kind of thing. And that next morning, we were all getting ready to go out on patrol, and we had a habit of stopping at Green Beans Coffee before rolling out, and we stopped, and he was in there, and he bought me a coffee and was like, hey man, sorry about last night. And it wasn't maybe an hour later, we heard over the net that he got hit by an IED and he was KIA. And we found out it was a EFP. And so we started hearing about tanks getting hit with EFPs, and I think it was in Baghdad where one was buried in the road facing up, and a tank got hit by it, and it actually penetrated through the hull and hit the driver in the back and mangled him up really bad, but didn't kill him. but disabled him really bad. And if I remember right, it was a guy that I was in basic training with. And so, that kind of really hit. And so there was a day when we were doing our route security in the tanks, and we had a small section of the Delta attachment drive past us, and they went down into mechanics, I think is what it was called, but it was just north of checkpoint 450, and they started taking contact and asked for our assistance. And I was with Gonzalez and Tebow. Tebow was on the gun, and so we rolled down, and obviously these guys aren't on the Blue Force tracker, right? And so we had no idea how to pinpoint their location. And Gonzalez is like, we need to go straight through 450. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I did, and we got hit. Naturally. It always happened. But it wasn't devastating. I believe it did take out the number one skirt, which is where that driver sits. And then they call us up and they're like, hey, you guys drove past us. Like, you need to turn around and come back. And I'm like, oh, great. We get to go right back through this checkpoint again. We did. Nothing happened. But, we got there and immediately started taking IDF and small arms and RPG. And these guys are dismounted behind us using our tank as cover. And Tebow is just laying hate, at these buildings. And finally, a JDAM came in and just demolished this building. And I remember Gonzalez saying, hey, they're pulling a flag out. I think they have a KIA. And I'm like, oh man, this is horrible. And he's like, wait, hold on. And then you hear the SF guys come over the radio. Yeah, Apache 3-4, we just re-enlisted 2 guys back here. And we're like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, all of this is going on, and y'all just re-enlisted a couple of guys.
I remember that because you guys were down in the alleyway doing that, and we parked out on the backside because we actually missed. You were going this way, we went this way, and we completely could not find them at all, and you guys got in. And I was on the 3 tank that day, and we parked up at the end of the alleyway while you were in, and I remember them out there re-enlisting this dude, out there holding the flag up on the side, and SF guys re-enlisting while you guys are in there laying can rounds out, and then we had those 2 A10s come in.
It was these guys right here.
Hey, maybe we can use this documentary to link up with them and kind of reenact this story again.
I remember the medic's name was Jody.
Really?
He was about 5 foot. He was like 5'5", and these guys are National Guard. I think they're group.
The 20th. There, hold it up again. Let's get a good screenshot of this, and we'll be able to put out the APB on anyone from ODA, Cuba Saints.
You would have a patch from them.
We get your,
and it still has the dirt on it. Because me and the medic went over to their little compound on Warhorse after that. Because Jody, their medic, we saw him at the aid station afterwards because we all had to go get checked out because we got hit. And he was in there for a sore shoulder. This dude was tough as nails and really good guy. It was really cool that they just showed no fear, and I think it was kind of a inspiring moment for us and kind of a what the heck kind of moment for us too. Like, what is going on? There was a lot of that
That
over
was
there, you know. A lot of
they had identified, or at least if I remember right, they had thought that they had identified Al Qaeda's capital building, and that's where they were trying to go in to get that, and then called those two A-10s to come in, which that's a trip. You see A-10s come in and do a couple rounds of strafing fire coming in on that building, and then drop two JDAMs on top of it. Whew. I wish I had my camera out for that one, but yeah,
And that also goes back to something Matt said, like in the early, very beginning is, train ups. You know, who would ever imagine here you are in theater and if, I mean, this might have been your first time, but over time it happened so frequently where because we had the group, or the detachments there at Warhorse, the other detachments at Gabe, that there was a lot of times there was that cooperation between ODAs and a tank company or a tank platoon, your section, where just randomly it's like, hey, come do this, or hey, help out with this, or so yeah, it's another one of those things that you don't train up or you never expect, but here you are in Bakuba, and now you're part of a attack on this Capitol building and a
yeah,
reenlistment.
yeah.
yeah. It's like something you'd read in a book or see in a movie. You know, it was just wild.
But yeah, hopefully we can make a little connection, get everybody connected back up, and retell the story again with everybody. But so yeah, so where would you say we are in the timeline of your adventures in Bakuba? Are we towards the middle? Are we getting towards the surge? Because you
We're
guys
getting
Not
both.
close to
quite
the
surge
surge.
yet, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely because that was so if we because it was when the surge started coming in shortly after that we started retake that ground slowly but surely, one alleyway at a time. It seemed. Um,
Yeah, we
In those
started to push
areas.
south of 451, the Muford traffic circle. Um, and that's what I was talking about before we got into everything. It was my first day as a tank commander, and Murphy was gunning that day, and Goody was driving, and we were just south of 451, and Murphy says, "Hey, we got this guy shooting a AK at us," and he's like a young kid, like he looks like he's 15, and every time Murphy would get his gun over there, the guy would dip out and run, and you wouldn't see him for a little while, and then after an hour or so, he came out on a bicycle and just rode a lap and went back in. And then we didn't see him for a while, and the streets were clear. Like there was no one down Vanessa, but I remember I was taking a leak and looking through the vision blocks, and I'm looking down that way, and I see the kid jump out with an RPG. And when I say I'm taking a leak, I'm in a bottle, but I scream and I drop the bottle, and I'm just RPG, and I'm watching this thing just come right at us, and it hits the tank, and I don't know how far this was. It maybe 400
is
meters.
that the one that hit the?
It was
It hit the. Yeah.
a fire suppression handle, but it felt like it was 5 minutes watching this thing come at us and knowing that it's going to hit, and all I'm thinking about is what we were told about this penetrator round, and I'm like, this is it. Is that why it's going so slow? Like, is this what's going on? And it hits, and my screen just goes crazy talking about fire suppression has been released, and I'm like, we're on fire. I'm really scared. I'm like Ricky Bobby now, just freaking out, and I'm calling platoon sergeant on the radio. He's north of us in the tanks, and I'm like, hey, we just got hit by RPG. The guy fired and he took off, so we suppressed a little bit, but we need to get out of here. And so Goody turns us around and drives us back to it wasn't the ERF anymore, it was the new outpost. Do any of y'all remember the name of that? Apache's new outpost?
I don't remember that one.
Can't
I
remember.
don't remember the name, I should say, but it was in the castle area, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we pulled in, and as we're pulling in, our 4 tank is calling over the radio to Apache 6 saying that he's now taking IDF and small arms fire, and we jump out inside the outposts, and we're assessing the damage, and the back part of the RPG stuck in the side of the tank where the T-handle was to pull the fire suppression, and that's the only damage there was. I mean, it split the very thin skirt back there, but
I have a
Murphy
video.
had
I
his
found
camera.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Murphy had his camera, and we're like, this is nuts, right? And so we mount back up and go out so we can help 4 out, see what's going on. And White Wolf elements arrive on station, and they say that they see a car in the adjacent alleyway where guys are getting weapons out of, and they fire a hellfire at it and take it out. And so we kind of make sure everything's good, and 4 tells us to go ahead and go back south and see if we can't find this guy. Obviously we have a vendetta, so we start driving down there, and Murphy's just got his sights right on this alleyway, and as we're driving, he's watching it, and we're gonna pie that corner, and just as we get aligned with that alleyway, buried IED blows up. Was it both sides of the road, daisy chained? Blows up, and just asphalt lands on top of the tank. But without even thinking, Murphy's already got that main gun round ready to go, and I don't think any of us were too rattled by it, but the tank definitely took some damage, some hubs and road wheels and skirts, and torsion bars were bent, and it was not my tank. It was lent to us. It was a new tank from our other section, from Alpha section, and that tank commander told me, don't mess my tank up, but not such nice words. And we're like, yeah, we got you, man. We're good. And we had to limp it back. And when we got back, we finally saw Goody. He's got these big chunks of asphalt in his hands. Like, dude, that was a wild day. It was crazy. That's how I got my cherry popped in the tank commander's seat.
One hell of a first day as TC.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not like what you see in the movies, the RPGs, or how they simulate them at NTC or JRTC. They put them on a string, and zip them through it. It's nothing like that. It is. You see the backblast and everything, the dust kick up, and you see that thing with a little contrail behind it coming right at you. It's just, I don't know how that kid pulled off such a great shot, because he was young. He was not a seasoned fighter, but that was his whole intent, was to lure us down there. Someone had paid him, I'm guessing, or threatened him. I'm not sure, but they were luring us down to that alleyway so that they could take their shot with that deep buried IED on us.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I think it was buried too deep, and that took it absorbed a lot of the energy.
Yeah, it was definitely not too far down, or it was down far enough that, I mean, we got so much asphalt on the front slope, but yeah, it just didn't, maybe they shot it too early or something, but it didn't mess us up too bad, fortunately. But
And then we get that question of when and how did they get that in there? And a lot of the circulating comments were, these things were put in long before we even got there. When there was no one doing all this route security, they'd been there for the longest time, and all they had to do was, connect the wires somewhere in the alleyway. And I guess that's a valid thought, but it amazed me how many IEDs I had at the time. I had this Google Earth account, and I wish I could still access it, because after every engagement, every IED, I would mark it on Google Earth, and that was our section, not our whole platoon, but our section. And it was crazy how many pin drops were on this map. Within that 13 months, it was insane. And we were fortunate to actually catch quite a few people in the act of placing these IEDs as well, which I think was a deterrent for a lot. And I remember my first one catching in the act. I forgot to laze before I fired with the coax, so he was probably 600 meters out, and my sights were set at like 250 or 200 or something. And so I swing the gun over there. I'm actually behind a wall at that date factory there by the traffic circle, and so the gun is just right over the wall, and so he didn't see us. And this guy just come out in broad daylight and got a bag, and he's trying to bury it. And I go to fire, and these rounds are hitting like way short, and this guy, he's taking off, and he's hiding behind, cars and stuff, and getting out of the way. And I couldn't react fast enough, and realize that I got so excited and forgot to laze the target. And embarrassing, but I'm sure we eventually got him.
yeah, you're mentioning how many IEDs there were out there, and I remember if we moved kind of forward towards us retaking the grounds, moving south towards 450 and 451 and that whole section. I remember when we were escorting EOD out there, and it was a slow, because there were so many. I think I still have pictures and video of like pothole after pothole all the way down there from all these IEDs all the way through, and we had to go and clear all of that in order to go take it back for, if I remember, that was when we were then getting ready to go into Arrowhead Ripper. And I remember the EOD was on this one side, and they had us, we were screening for them, and so we pull up alongside and hopped over the main MSR into the kind of the alleyway. We had to hop over the curb into there, and as we're looking down south, I remember seeing this wrap of wires. It was probably about this big, and it was just all these wires. They had it all buried before that, but then there was a concrete embankment on the edge, and they couldn't dig under it or something. They had to come up and over it, and so this whole wrap of wires about this big comes up and over the thing, and then it disperses to all the holes full of IEDs out there. And it was, I don't know how many wires were in there, but we called it up, um, and EOD ended up going down, and we spent all day out there going from one hole to the next with them blowing IEDs, and we ended up cutting that with the coax. And I just remember it just wires everywhere as we cut that thing open with the coax to kill it all. And I'm sure we sent the infantry guys into town to find where those were all going and everything else. But I just remember seeing it, that it was like, man, there is hundreds of IEDs placed in that section through there. And that was why we didn't go down there, or we couldn't really go down there, because you knew if you went down, you were going to get hit. It was just a matter of time. So,
they, aside from the larger IEDs, they started doing VBIDs as well in our sector, and that was a really tense time, because we had training, minimal training on assessing or identifying potential VBIDs, but EOD was always really on edge looking for VBIDs. At one time, I think they called a motorcycle a potential VBID. Yes. Because of the exhaust on it. They thought it was really dumb. But we were more concerned with the VBIDs with four wheels, and Murphy talked about it in a recent Facebook post, the very first one that we encountered. And I think, Goody, were you driving the tank on that one when it got hit by the VBID with Johnson?
Remember.
You don't remember?
A lot of things I don't remember. Are you talking right now? Like, I remember the stuff right now.
Yeah, it's all coming back to you.
Yeah, I had to go back through my notes and pictures and all that stuff too, like Murphy.
It was either Goody or Lopez, I think, driving on that one.
Yeah. It was a blue hatchback, just full of propane tanks, and I remember Gonzalez calling on the radio, "Hey, watch out for that car," and instantly, just that car was gone, disintegrated, and we were just like, "What just happened?" How we couldn't see the tank because it had rolled through, and all you see is all this smoke and dust and debris and the fireball, and where we can't see the tank.
Propane tanks just slow motion flying through the air, yeah.
I think that was more of a hasty type of setup that car had. Once again, it was their TTPs. They're watching us and learning and building off of that, because they were improving each time. They was trial by fire. They learned from their mistakes just like we learned from our mistakes, and that was the constant tempo with us and them. We were always trying to stay ahead of them, and vice versa. And thankfully they never got too far ahead on us.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, that's the time period as, we move into Arrowhead Ripper, we move into the Surge, where now there's more boots on the ground, but that's also because the insurgent forces were now being pushed out everywhere else. So like the rise of suicide bombers, that's more of a certain terrorist organizations TTP. So you start seeing new players into town, and then you start seeing those, as you were talking about, TTPs that were being implemented and trying to get ahead of our tactics to get around their tactics. So
yeah, right at the beginning of Arrowhead Ripper, we were in between patrols, And I remember we went to the little shopette up by the big hangar on Warhorse, and I'm walking into the PX, and I just look north, and I see this giant fireball going up.
Mm,
It
yes.
was incredible, incredible. And then, 10 seconds later, you hear and feel the concussion come through, and we found out that it was a dump truck V-bed that had blown up in Tahrir, just north of us. And I think it was targeting the IPs or IA up there, but it was just massive. Golly, like I remember thinking we cannot have, we cannot be lax and not look for stuff like this. You can't take a chance at that stuff. And we we were really diligent about keeping vehicles away from us, from that point, because they were really picking up the tempo with V beds in our sector.
Yeah, you'd almost think it was like their last big haymaker because you brought up the V-bid, the story you're telling. I don't know if you gentlemen were either there or remember, but we had the chlorine bomb, big V-bid at the gate, and that was a big, oh man, not only was it a V-bid, but then you add the chemical aspect of it, and then that cloud that blew across Warhorse, and it was just adding another TTP, another just thing to add to your already huge list of things to be on the lookout for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so as we kind of roll into Arrowhead Ripper and towards the end of our deployment, what stands out for you gentlemen with like Arrowhead Ripper?
I think if I remember right, for Arrowhead Ripper was kind of when we really started. It was a heavy push, and then it was like the storm calmed after all that. If I remember right, like it got to the point where we were in such high tempo all the time, constant attack or on edge of something, and then got to the point where we were, it got quiet almost. It was kind of weird, but during Arrowhead Ripper, I know that was, we had one engagement where we put 4 tanks online and had to take out a house because we had an IED hit one of our Bradleys, and I think it ended up killing the driver on that one, if I remember right. You remember that, Matt?
Yeah. It was the day I got back from leave.
Okay, yeah. And the commander said, take that building out. And we basically rolled up on it. Yeah. Four tanks online laying rounds into that building. I think we each put 4 rounds into it, something like that. But
I think when that operation kicked off, we did we stage at Fob Gabe then?
trying to remember.
I'm pretty sure we were staged
We
out
were
in
actually for a
sector,
little bit. Yeah.
and we would be out on on our tanks for 48 hours. You know, big big log pack with a lot of food, a lot of water, a lot of wild tigers and ripets, and not a lot of sleep. And I mean, when we came back for refit, we had to go shave because we all had, like, we all looked like Goody there. We had a good amount of stubble and maybe not so much gray, but we were we were tired. And I remember one day I was so tired. We had been up for so long that I could have swore I watched a lion walk across an alleyway, and it blew my mind. Like, I don't remember if I said anything about it, but I know I was hallucinating. And those wild tigers will do it to you. they who knows what were in those things. But if you're drinking them steady all day and rip fuel and all that junk, it's not good for you. But those were some long days. But I was really glad that we could be that that iron barrier for our infantry on the ground, and have these big guns out there, overwatching them, and just watching windows, watching for V beds to roll in, and catching squirters, trying to outflank the infantry, or get behind them. It was very kinetic time, at least from the infantry guys and also the air weapon systems. They were huge, huge assets to these guys rolling in, and just leveling some buildings that the Al Qaeda guys were just holed up in, and it was incredible to witness and be a part of, and just I think like Bobby said in his Pulitzer discussion, that was probably one of the most successful and streamlined operations that we could have had, during OIF, because everything just went off without a hitch, and just it was like rolling thunder. You just went in and just cleaned house. And like Brad said, the contrast of before that operation and after was amazing, because we started to see kids out playing on the soccer fields and people out shopping, and the entire dynamic shifted like immediately. Yeah, it was really weird, but you had that sense of pride that you helped liberate that city, because these people were miserable. Like I said, when we first got there, we were doing that first outer cordon for the IA. The shops were open, people were living their lives, but we started seeing dead bodies out in the street, guys with their hands tied behind their back, laying at the end of the alleyways for us to see, and that's like the most ominous thing. It was like a hunter, putting his catch up on the wall. That's what these guys were doing to these civilians, and it was. I think it gave us a lot of urge for retribution, and to get this place back to where it needed to be. And I think for the most part we all understood that these are normal people that just want to live their lives and have freedom of movement, and their God-given right to live. We recognized that, and we knew that we were what Diala needed to get them back on track of living their life.
Yeah, and it's important, and hopefully the historians, yes, maybe the surge was unpopular at the time, but taking these stories, like everything you all just were saying, it shows where when you have enough boots on the ground, what can be accomplished. Because yes, the strikers came in. Yes, there's a whole lot of them, but that's the early striker tank. And there's not too many of them. Where you guys were still the big firepower that was able to provide that immediate close support, and then another layer came the air weapons team. So, um,
It's funny. I'd note that those wild tigers, those rippets, all that stuff, they're terrible for you. During those 48-hour missions that we were doing, I passed a kidney stone out there on the route,
whoa,
um,
okay.
into a bottle. It was a lot of fun. Standing in the loader's hatch on the 3 tank. Yeah, ended up passing a kidney stone out there while sitting on the route, because you can't go in. We got to be out there, got to keep our security going. But we when for me anyway, it was when we first started really ramping up with all the attacks and everything else. I remember being so tired in the tank that I would fall asleep with my eye on the reticle, and I remember we got shot at one point, and I was like, oh shoot, I was so tired, I was falling asleep, and I didn't drink energy drinks before that, and I was like, I can't have this happen, and so I just started drinking those energy drinks like it was no tomorrow, wild tires and rippets and everything else we could get in the tank, and every day when we go out on the route, we'd load up our cooler full of all of those, so we could maintain that cognizant ability to keep that security as best we could. And unfortunately, I think that's probably why I got kidney stones. But uh, but yeah, I just remember that was why we drank so many of those things. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So unless you guys have like a burning something else you want to kind of get out and talk in this format, the way we normally kind of wrap these things up is just kind of, hey, how did Bakuba affect rest of your life? So first I'd go back to, is there anything else that you guys wanted to share or talk about as a group, or are we good for how did Bakuba affect rest of your life?
I think honestly,
I can share
for
that
me,
with
I
the
mean,
one.
there's so many different stories one could pop open with, but
Well,
Goody, do you have
I
something
know
you'd like
we
to
had
throw
the
out
other
there?
dude who wasn't able to get on. We can always, do it again. I mean, totally up to y'all.
Goody, you were
Yeah, I
saying
was gonna
something.
say the one time I think it was me, the one that got shot on the roof. The one by a sniper. I got a picture of the like day before they shot us, and it was like a steel projectile. The jacket was steel. It wasn't copper. It wasn't lead. And like a couple of days or weeks is when Smith got shot. I remember that. I remember that. I remember that it was Gosler was the medic, and he rubbed down his arm. I mean, he was holding the brain, and he was wrapping up the whole head with his hand and stuff. And then we got medevac. Yeah.
Was that guy's name Johnson?
I don't remember it was Johnson. I think it was Smith. It was new. It was new. The guy was new. Guy didn't really uh, know him very much. But he was in the other corner because I was in one corner. He was in the other corner. I remember the Marafi was like he thought I was getting shot because the round that hit actually hit my cavalier a few days ago. I mean, a few days before. Yeah.
Mike, Brad got me thinking when he was talking about what you process and feel when you're in a gunner's seat and engaging enemy, and how you kind of detach yourself from the reality of it. Um, I was thinking while he was talking about that, I'm always telling my youngest son, he's 9 now, but he's always been infatuated with military stuff, and he's got 100 different toy guns. He's literally has like full uniform sets from ACUs to the newer multicam stuff. And my wife and I are always stressing, you're not going into the military, son. It's not going to happen. Not if I'm alive. It's not going to happen. And he'll play that Call of Duty World War II game, and he's got a really big imagination, and he'll say, oh, if that was me, I would shoot him, in the face and all this. And I don't want to get too heavy on him because he's young still, but I want even teenagers to know that, it's one thing to do it in a game, but doing it in real life, actually taking someone's life, is not a game. It's you feel completely different afterwards, and you know that detachment aspect of it from the gunner seat, seeing it in the thermals, that definitely helps. But there was a time when we were on the roof, and I had that DMR, that M14, and we were taking shots from the date factory. And so our infantry guys rolled out in a Bradley and crashed through the gates of the date factory, and the guy jumped over the west wall, or the east wall, facing our building, and I identified the rifle and pulled the trigger, and he dropped into the weeds. And it was completely different feeling from when you're engaging someone in a tank, because that you see him 300 meters out, and that you just hit him, and it was from a rifle like that you've been shooting your whole life, and you do that. And I have told all my sons, all three of them, that it's not a game, and nothing can prepare you for that feeling that you get. And I'm not saying that everyone has remorse or anything like that. It's not about that. It's just it changes you, and even if you're not religious, I think it still changes how you look at life and how you perceive your own life, to know that you've done that was so easy. It was so easy for you to do, but you're surrounded by all these people, even over here, stateside, you're surrounded by all these people that it would be easy for them to do it, and they have. There's always some crazy person out there willing to do something so easy and destroy other humans. And so it makes you kind of think about it in that aspect, that you can do the same thing as what a crazy person does over here. And I just don't want my kids to have to associate themselves like that, or think of themselves like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. I mean, it's something we talk about a lot in just the mental health about. I think you brought it up in the beginning, what the military trains you to do. And then when you go do it, it's not very good at training you how to live after what you've done. And if you go back to, and I know Brad's the only one still in uniform now, I retired in 2022. But even till, and Brad, feel free to jump in at any moment, but even up to 2022, I could tell firsthand, the military still, or the Army, I'm sorry, I only speak for the Army. The Army still doesn't do a very great job at like the mental health aspect. And that's trying to help you reintegrate into society as a better person after everything you have done, if that makes any sense. But,
Yeah.
transition is focusing on you getting a job and knowing your benefits. Where if you think about it, and I know everyone's MOS is different, and I always like to say, hey, let's just think about it as a round number of 20. Maybe that's short. Let's say 40 weeks. It takes 40 weeks to create a soldier. But, to create a civilian, or to reintegrate you as a veteran, there's not a real emphasis on the mental health aspect. And that goes back to a lot of the stuff you're talking about, Matt, where you have done some things that, probably something you would never do if you weren't in the military. But how do you now live your life knowing that you can turn that switch on and do those things?
Yeah. And I think you fight so hard to not get your you fight yourself hard not to get upset at things enough to make you want to do things or be violent, and because it came so easy over there to just turn it on and do your work. And then back here, I mean, like the with with all of the divisiveness and crazy stuff that's going on, and you got to be hyper aware when you're out in public, because you never
Mhm.
know, when something can happen. And mentally you're prepared because you've done it before. And I carry everywhere I go. I carry, um, because my second deployment, that's when Fort Hood was, they had that
Mhm.
active shooter there. And um, and you just never know when it's going to happen. And that you can turn it on and do it, but it's also hard to not at least think about that stuff, even when you're just agitated at minor things, like somebody crosses words with you, and you're thinking in your head, bro, I could just eliminate you right now, and it's not gonna, you know it's not gonna be hard. And you don't want to think like that. You don't want to process your emotions like that, because that's definitely not the right way to go about things.
So I did not come up with this concept, and I wish I remember which I won't say male influencer, but it was one of the military guys who he was doing a video. But I would kind of challenge you to look at the other way. And what he was saying is, we all have that monster inside, right? And during your time in service, during your deployments, you can flip that on. You do what you have to do. You protect the man to your left and right. You do your mission. You bring everybody home the best of your ability. And going back to what you were talking about, so yes, here in the States, you don't want to flip that on. However, if the situation arises and you had to protect your family, you had to protect others, you can. But what he was saying is, and something we need to teach our young boys is, don't push that away, but learn how to use that energy, use that monster, acknowledge it, and keep it in control. Versus, and not to get all philosophical on where we're going as a society and everything like that, but you hear so much about, oh, don't do this and just calm down and woosah and all that stuff, where but instead of just acknowledging that, hey, you can, it's having control. And that's where, going back to what you keep talking about with your sons, is teaching them that control. And also, yes, video games, video games in real life are not, that they don't mix. Or, well, that doesn't make, that's not good saying they don't mix, but it's not real life. There is no reset button. There is no respawn and try again.
Yeah, you pull the trigger, that's it. But I mean, that's how I think Bakuba and my following deployment changed my perception or outlook on life, and changed me as a person. And to know that what we did over there was bigger than any of us, liberating that that sector, and changing the the demographic for sure. And giving these people their uh, their homes back, and empowering the sons of Iraq to guard their people as well. And those guys really started putting in some work once they
Mhm.
had our backing. Obviously when it started out, they were against us. And um, that's the power of um, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, influence, obviously, but just
So in like the
working
mental
with
health
them.
field, you would call it like modeling and mirroring. So we
Yeah,
model how it is good to stand up to the bad of whatever. I mean, I know I'm very making the situation very simplified, but we showed them like you can stand up, you can fight, unite, and you can take back your city.
Yeah,
And
get
like
these
what you're
foreign
saying,
invaders out.
yeah,
You know,
and that's part of the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's one thing to, have your own um, faction, fighting against what you believe is the enemy, but then you have all these other guys come in and jump in, and you know now it's three different forces, and it, you they first may have welcomed it, and then they realized that that was just a taste, and they're just going to keep coming, and more of them's going to keep coming, and that it's really to the detriment of your community, your people, and they saw that. They saw these foreign fighters come in masses at night, and start to take over and start to not only get us in their crosshairs, but them as well. And they were taking what they wanted. They were destroying without any um, um, reprise. They just wanted to take Bakuba for themselves. They were sloppy about it, and that's why I believe what were they? I know they were Sons of Iraq, right? That was their name, the militia group that was
Mhm.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, that stood up and the big Sunni awakening, but
yeah.
exactly. And what you're talking about is really highlighted in his book by Scott Mann, Rooftop Leadership, where, yes, we weren't on the rooftops, but standing up to the enemy and empowering and helping change that dynamics can directly be correlated with the rise of the Sons of Iraq and Sons of Bakuba and all these different militias that came together to say enough's enough. We're going to retake our country.
I mean, I guess in closing, I'm just proud of what our unit did, and as small as our platoon and our section was, um, you know, we, albeit I don't think we want the recognition or anything, but it's really nice to have an outlet to talk about these things and share our stories. We did a lot of work there, and we definitely uh, paid a price. I think all of us for that. My body hurts every day. Um, I've got bulging discs. When I got medically retired in 2013, found out that I actually had a stress fracture in my neck, and that's what this scar is right
Yeah.
here. They fused my neck. Um, we we hit a lot of IEDs between all of our tanks, and some of them were pretty massive. Like it would have disintegrated a Humvee for sure, And uh, I think at first we didn't want to mess around with the tanks because they're a lot of maintenance. We spent a lot of nights in the motor pool area fixing our tanks so we could mount right back up and go back out and get them broken again. And we definitely kept our maintenance guys busy for sure.
They were top notch
So
too. They kept us rolling.
yeah, they were the best. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with Brad Carey yet, but yeah, him and his guys were just incredible, and they worked harder than any of us even, because they were always having to work for us. And I'm just proud of our platoon for real. Like we just we toughed it out.
That's really great that you said all that and gave a good shout out to your maintainers. And yeah, if you have their info, pass it along or tell them, hey, email Mike and let's chat, because there is such a perception of, if you're not a trigger puller, then you didn't do anything, and that's far from the truth. I mean, because not only were they doing maintenance, you had like the distro platoon who was rotating out to the different cops to not only do log pack, but they'd stay there and pull security and do all these other random jobs that freed everyone else up to do what they did. So, no, that's really that was a really great statement and summarizing, just y'all's experience or your experience. I mean, we'll give everybody a chance to kind of have their word, but no, that was thank you for sharing. That was really
Yeah.
touching, Matt. So I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing someone actually saying thank you to the unsung heroes of the maintenance guys.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Goody? You got anything you'd like to share or kind of close out? Oh, hold on one second. Because I had some feedback there. We'll do some editing too.
Oh, you're muted, Goody.
All right, there you go, Goody.
I was saying that I used to talk a lot, not anymore. um, it does change. It does change. Um, More aware of stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was not a joke. Sometimes at the beginning you're like you're going in, you're going out right away. I remember when I was in Korea, they asked me if I wanted to go. My buddy from basic training, he was over there. He was in Fallujah, and I was like, eh. I mean, remember when they asked me, I was drinking. I was like, maybe next week. You know what I'm saying? I was taking it like a kid, like a joke. But then when I went to tobacco, it's completely different.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not very
different
talkative.
experiences. But yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
All right. Guess that leaves us with Brad.
Yeah. So, as you know, I'm still in, and um, I when I left Bakuba, I went into the recruiting world straight out of that deployment, and felt that I had done pretty much everything you could do on a tank at that time, and so I needed to go and find something else somewhere else I could do something, and so I volunteered for recruiting and did that, and um, took my experiences into um, helping other people find their way into the Army, and then from there I went into the drill sergeant world in the reserve side, and I've been in that world now since about 2014 in one capacity or another. Bakuba really shaped how I train my troops now. In a lot of cases, as a first sergeant, when I got pulled into being a first sergeant of a drill sergeant company, I've trained my drills to effectively have to put way more effort into their training that they're providing than they would otherwise. Because um, before I became a first sergeant, I was an OC, observer, controller, trainer, and I would go and work with the reserve units and help them get ready for their mobilizations. And through that, I was seeing that our troops really weren't um, or are not trained to the standard of which I would say that they would be ready to go downrange. Um, Certainly not with the things that we went through. And we're getting ready to, we're training in a LISCO environment now where, it's a imminent um, threat coming back, is where we're standing at now. We're looking at it saying, um, we need to prepare for the next world war is where we're at right now. And that's what the generals are telling us today. And, so looking at it, when I became a first sergeant, it was we changed our mission as the drill sergeant company to provide training for all of our um, reserve companies around us, because I was not seeing that they were getting properly trained. We were out providing their PMI for their range kind of stuff, and it was almost laughable at times, watching things, and it was like, how is this okay as a reserve army force, that this should be how we are? And so I've taken the lessons that we did from Bakuba, the long nights, the security, the constant on edge, and push that into providing the training for those around us. And because ultimately, I don't want others to have to go through it like we did, and those moments where, you're getting shot at and you're all of a sudden like, oh, this is real, right? It's a moment, and our brains aren't made to think about that kind of stuff. We're not made to see those things like Matt was talking about at the beginning, and so to try and provide better training is what we really, really shot out to do, and how I've taken my experiences forward and worked with units when they're mobilizing, these young officers that have not a clue what they're getting ready to mob into and stuff, and trying to advise them, that, hey, you really need to do A, B, and C here. You really should look at these actions. You really should think about these things. And, oftentimes I'd get feedback of, well, that's not really ever going to happen. So why do we need to act like that? Because it can, and because you aren't seeing it right now, the enemy does not care when all of a sudden you're tired, or when all of a sudden you're using the NBC hose to blow your cheeks apart in your mouth, to play around. That's the enemy does not care, and so we got to be constantly better at what we do. And unfortunately, we have degraded, in my opinion, as far as our training over the years, since coming off of all those that wartime effort. And so yeah, that's essentially where I've taken it. Is it's been a mission of mine to prepare my soldiers that I have to provide the training that others need, because who else is going to do it? There's a lot of slick sleeves out there anymore. The combat patch on the right side is not common anymore. I think Bobby talks about it in his book of using these lessons for the next generation. And, that's where I see myself leading this next generation of NCOs, helping them to understand they're not going through deployments right now. They don't have that behind them. And if they do a deployment, they're going to Kuwait and maybe pop up into Iraq a little bit, but they're not doing what we were doing. It's not the same thing. So, we have to help them be ready when the flag goes up, because it's coming. So,
And doing
anyway.
things in this format is, I'm going to say, better. Had a conversation about this with others. You think about 20 years ago, before the rise of the smartphone and all that kind of stuff. People used to go to the VFW. They used to talk to old timers. They would hear these stories from another human being face to face. Well, fast forward to where we're at now. People really, and I'm not knocking it. I mean, there are those that still go, but the masses just don't go to the old NCO clubs. I mean, I don't even know how many posts still have that, but the old NCO club, the VFWs, the American Legion, to talk to those old timers. So this is a great way of capturing lessons learned, putting it into a format and content that younger people will actually pay attention to, or will, watch. And hopefully, like what you're saying, Brad, is affecting future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is how we lead the next generation forward. You know, they're not going to learn it. If we can teach them something here from the time that we went through, I hope they can pick something up. They can glean something from our time over there. Uh, you know, Matt said at the beginning that, you know, we weren't trained really for all of that. We had training, but never did we have the training that truly was necessary for all of the things that we came up against. Yeah, unfortunately, we had amazing people that we worked with, and you know, we rose to the challenge and we got out there, and you know, our leadership, our, you know, everybody from the lowest private with us all the way up, you know, we all knew what the mission was, and we got out there and we did it. And you know, I'm thankful to God that we were there when we were, and we were able to come back as we have. And it's it's a mission that I'll never forget. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's all facts, and you know, great men such as yourselves and all of us working together now. Hopefully, we can do the story justice, get everybody's different perspectives, and get it out there. So, I really do appreciate y'all's time. Like I said, if we want to try again when you get Uh, I'm sorry. I was looking at my phone for his name, but anyways, if we want to try again, you know, I don't mind. If you guys want to do individual debriefs, hey, I don't mind that either. I know Brad, you and I are going to chat a couple more times because, you know, all the stuff you're doing for the ambassadorship and fundraising, which, hey, great job on, you know, your 1 minute theme. I mean, you still got time, but you know, you're moving towards that goal. But as you and I talked about before, hey, every dollar helps. Every dollar is getting us closer to that goal. It takes that grassroots, you know, getting everybody involved.
Yeah, Brad really picked it up and ran with it. You know, I feel like I introduced him to the
Yep.
Debrief project, but
Yep.
man, he took off, and I didn't even know that I could donate to Debrief project until I saw him post about it. And so I'm like, man, I've been under a rock, and I'm the one that showed you about it. And so, yeah, I think it's very important. And you know, the more ambassadors or key figures you guys can include and help, you know, spread the news and the word, I think is going to be, you know, a really good tool for debrief and getting these stories out there and attracting the awareness that I think it deserves.
Yeah, a team effort. You know, I just threw up the little support the mission. You know, just like what you're doing right there. You introduced Brad, keep hyping it up, Matt. You know, point people in the right direction. You know, get them to the website. You know, just show people what we are doing. I think the story sells itself, but with people talking positively about it, people showing like, hey, they're doing these debriefs in person, remote debriefs. They're gathering all this uh, data, context to the stories, personal experiences. It's a healing, you know, storytelling is a way to heal. So everyone's, you know, hopefully getting something from sharing, but then being able to wrap this all up together and hopefully, you know, raise the funds to do this documentary. It's going to be a great way to wrap this thing up. And then from
Yeah,
there, there's a
absolutely.
future for the Debrief project. It's going to be finding a new story to tell, you know, whether that's the invasion or, you know, who knows, maybe one of these Navy ships that is out there shooting at the Houthis or something. You know, we'll see. But, you know, there is a future for the Debrief project to continue after this story.
You know, my current commander, um, she's a psychologist, and we were talking about this last weekend, and she mentioned, she says, I wish every soldier had a debrief project that they could be able to tell their story with, because there's such power in telling story and being able to open up and share this out there, you know, beyond just being able to work through it, but just be able um, to have that healing inside of it. I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal, you know, and I look forward to seeing what more comes out of it, and hopefully we can hit that whole minute with my my goal right now. We're about $2,200 out of the 5,900 that we need for 1 minute of that that time. So it's, you know, if people can donate, hop on online and hit that donate button there. Like you said, every dollar counts for you, and you know there's a lot of dollars to make this thing happen. So yeah, absolutely.
We
Well,
need this documentary. We need it. I get so irritated that not many people have heard about the battle for Bakuba. You know, yeah, Bobby's got his book. I've got my copy back here, and you know, it's signed by Bobby and then everyone else. I think that was in my platoon. My wife arranged that back when the book came out. So,
that's awesome.
but no one has heard about it. It is very undercredited, and I think it is one of the most influential and definitely one of the most kinetic battles that Iraq has seen. But it didn't get the news coverage and the fascination that the other battles like Fallujah or Ramadi got. And I just don't agree with that. I think that our folks, especially our brothers and sisters that didn't make it, you know, I think that they deserve a lot more to get that story out there. So we need this show to go mainstream for sure.
Boom. Perfect way to kind of wrap it up. So, hey, I really appreciate you guys. I'm